Data can be your best friend or a creator's worst enemy. Data tells a story, but if you don't know exactly what you're looking at, know which analytics actually matter, then chances are you're not making data-driven decisions. As strategists, we see a picture that most creators don't. We want to talk about that with you today.
Hey, welcome to the Video Creators Podcast presented by vidIQ. You know how you put a lot of time and energy into your YouTube channel for not nearly enough growth? Yep, we get it. We are here today to help you change that.
Hello creators, how are you guys? It's great to see you here again for another Video Creators Podcast episode like we do with you every Monday. We love to share more advanced growth tips and tactics, next level strategy, growing your business, helping you reach more people and change their lives. I'm hanging out with Sam today, one of our YouTube strategists here on the team. Tim has abandoned us for sunny California. Again.
Yeah, we're just taking over again. That's what's really happening here.
We are fully taking over here. What's new with you, Sam?
Not too much. Doing pretty well. How about you?
I'm pretty good. Just came back from a trip visiting my dad out in Germany in the Black Forest, which is always nice.
Every time you say the Black Forest, it sounds like Harry Potter or some like Narnia or something like that.
You know, so it really magical. Is when you're in it too, because it is really dark. I have to say, there's a reason they call it the Black Forest. Yeah. There's just like no sunlight that penetrates it at all. But I always love it, and especially in the wintertime, because it snowed almost every day that we were there, which was great, and had an opportunity to kind of get lost into the forest where you can't see another person or car or anything. It was great.
Yeah. And speaking of getting lost, we're talking about analytics today, right?
Yes, we are. One of yours and my favorite topics.
It is
that actually, we don't get to talk about a lot. And the reason that we chose to talk about this today is because Tim's not here. It's not his favorite topic.
Yes.
Each week, we like to highlight a new creator and talk about some of the struggles that they're experiencing on the platform. This week, Blake sat down with Rachel Pedersen from Text in Church, which is a very cool channel. They have a particular product, which is an easy-to-use two-way texting system created for churches to connect their members and guests beyond just Sunday mornings, making them feel more known, noticed, and loved, which is a very cool mission. But one of the things that they have really experienced is common amongst creators here on the platform. They suffer from complete analysis paralysis with information overload about all the YouTube strategies out there, tips and tricks, and like not really knowing where to start. She sat down with Blake and had a conversation about how they overcame that to be more confident in their YouTube strategy.
So I work for Text in Church. It is a communication software for churches. We help them connect with their people beyond Sunday mornings in hopes that they make them feel known, noticed, and loved. That is kind of our mission in a nutshell. Before my time here, Facebook ads was like the thing. Like that was the main driver for Text in Church to get new leads, new trials. I think Facebook kind of had like a heyday time with their ads, but then in the last couple of years, we've noticed that they're not as effective. And as a company, we don't want to put all of our eggs in one basket and just rely on Facebook ads. So seeing that YouTube was actually working in our favor once we were being consistent and our ads were being seen, our ad spend went up, that I think was when it clicked even more for our leadership. They're all about numbers. And so they had more buy-in, and that's when my responsibility became bigger. They wanted me to learn as much as I can. And that's when I found Tim's 30-day course. And so that's kind of how things evolved. And I am now like, this is my baby. I focus so much on YouTube, and I've just been loving it ever since.
What is it you wanted from your efforts on YouTube? What were you thinking you were trying to glean from all of this?
Yeah, so my mission with our YouTube channel is kind of twofold. I want it to be an engine that gets us new leads new like brand awareness and gets people in the door. But then I also, once they become members, I want this to be a place that they can go to learn more. There's that phrase, I'll just YouTube it. And I want our members to get into the rhythm of like, oh, I can probably just YouTube that.
Mm-hmm. Right. So tell me about some of the struggles, I guess, you bumped in on YouTube, and how did that make you feel? How did you overcome that? What did you decide to try? I'm sure there's, for a lot of people I've worked with, there's like, you jump into YouTube and it's just like, okay, you don't know what you don't know. And it's like, you start trying things like, this works, but I don't know why it works. And then this doesn't work and it should work. What the heck's going on?
Oh, yeah.
So like, talk about some of those struggles and how did it make you feel? How'd you overcome that?
Definitely. I mean, sometimes I suffer from analysis paralysis for sure. There is just so much to do. And there's so many different like strategies and tips and tricks and all of the things. But when I started the 30-day course and then also with like video labs, I really liked when Tim said small tweaks lead to big peaks. And so as I was learning things, I would just try to like update the banner or work on these thumbnails and just try little experiments. I've probably updated our banner with different messaging and like graphics 5 times in the last like 6 months, just trying to test it out. One of my first goals when I first started, we didn't even have 1,000 subscribers. So that was a big goal of mine, was I wanted to hit 1,000, because at that point I thought you just needed 1,000 to get monetized. But no, once I got the 1,000, I was like, dang it, you have to have 4,000 hours.
Yeah.
So now that is like my big goal this year, is to get to that point so we can be monetized. And we're not wanting to make money necessarily off of it, but it just unlocks, like, we can on end screens, we can be able to link to our website, or there's just more opportunities and things that you can get your hands on. One of the things is I want to keep people on our channel. And we're definitely very into like call to actions, and we're trying to get used to not having them download a lead magnet, but watch something else. And so that's been something that we've been really working on recently. And Blake, you actually gave me some really great advice. For example, so I've been really experimenting with end cards and getting people to click on a new video or playlist. And we've just been struggling, and our retention is not that great. And I shared one of my videos and you said, well, you're using ending language. Our CEO is kind of our main talent. And so he was saying for more information, like, and just the way he was saying it, the copy that we were using, it was very much ending language. And you said, maybe play around with presenting a new problem, or not using for more information. Check out So we have been doing different language in our scripts, and hopefully we'll have better and screen clicks and getting them to stay on our YouTube channel. So those are some of the struggles that we have had, is like getting people to stay in our retention, but we're working on it. And I feel like we're making some progress.
Say you're talking to somebody who's trying to grow their channel like you and your company. What's one piece of advice you'd give them?
Going back to the small tweaks leads to big, small tweaks leads to big peaks. Yeah. Just take it a step at a time. Just like 1 week, focus on thumbnails, or the next week, focus on play around with shorts. Like, put it into bite-sized pieces has been super helpful. You don't need to do everything in one day, or you're not going to have success overnight. It's definitely a slow and steady race, I guess. It's so cliche, but also, like I said before, you're not married to that thumbnail or that title, or you can. And in the video labs, like, there's people talk about like, oh, I took that down and I re-uploaded it later in the day. And everyone's going to be different. Some things are going to work better for others. And you just have to really focus in on your audience and how your industry is.
Thank you so much for chatting with us. I really appreciate this.
Yeah,
Again, it's been awesome you having in Video Labs, and all the best moving forward.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Sam, you had an opportunity to work with Rachel, I believe, in a consultation before, right?
I did. Yeah, we did a consultation together.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I loved about her conversation is really one of the things that she quoted Tim on: small tweaks lead to big peaks. And that really is true, especially when you are digging into analytics. She was saying to just really kind of keep the bigger picture in mind by making small bite-sized changes. Yeah. What's been your experience with a lot of creators that you've worked with?
Yeah, I would say those small tweaks, the biggest question that I feel like we get is like, where do I make those tweaks and how do I know if I'm making the right ones? And this is going to be a little bit of our conversation today, but really figuring out where to look in the YouTube studio to know what tweaks to make, but then from there to know where to look and evaluate, like, am I making progress? Am I improving? Because a lot of YouTube as a creator is kind of competing with yourself. And so to look at some of these small tweaks that you're making and then be able to just evaluate and see what's happening here and then make some data-driven decisions from there to make those tweaks, that is kind of what pushes you forward to those, the big peaks, the big wins down the road.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. Now, if you want to sit down and surround yourself with a team of strategists, help you also identify what those small tweaks are to make on your channel, like Rachel did, you can work with Sam Blake or myself. We would love to help you reach those new levels on your channel. Just go to videocreators.com/discovery call and book a free 15-minute session with us. We want to hear your story. We want to know what's going on for your channel. What are your goals? And more importantly, what are your roadblocks? If it makes sense for us to work together, we'll explore what that looks like. And if not, no problem too. So Sam, when we think of analytics, there is an entire world of analytics on the back end of YouTube, right?
There really is, yeah.
It's actually a little, I love it and I kind of hate it too. I remember before I really understood how to properly read analytics and understand how to take that to spot growth opportunities for myself in general, it was frustrating because there was so much data and I just didn't know what was heads or tails of it.
Oh, I totally agree. Yeah, same experience for me.
Yeah, I feel like that is the same for a lot of people that we work with. So my goal today in our conversation is really to help the audience understand what are the key metrics that we need to focus on and why. And then maybe a little bit practical of how to best use that to make decisions that are actually going to be helpful, right, versus cause more analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
So when I kind of say all that, what comes first to mind for you in some of the conversations that you've had with clients?
Yeah, I think for me, when I'm talking to a creator, it helps for me to kind of know how into the analytics do you get? Like, when you open up a graph, does it freak you out and you run away? Or is it exciting? Do you like to look at that kind of stuff? So it helps to get a little bit of a gauge for kind of where someone is at when it comes to this and how intimidating it might be. But I think when we're starting to dig into what we're looking for, I think it really helps to know, like, what is the goal? Like, what are we trying to improve here with our videos, with our channel? I think the overarching goal for everybody is I want more views and I want more subscribers. And then it's kind of like, what do I need to do to make that happen? Where it is a bit of a zoomed out thing. And it's also kind of out of our control. It's easier to use our analytics to spot, like, I love that language of spotting growth opportunities, like you said, when it comes to, some of these viewer signals and some of these more zoomed in areas of, titles and thumbnails or part of our video structure, or little pieces here and there where that's within our control to improve. So as we're getting better at these things, we can effectively lead to the results of more views and more subscribers. So yeah, that's kind of the first place I like to lean into as far as kind of like, what is kind of the goal here? Like, what do you feel like you're lacking on, and what kind of, how is your familiarity with the analytics in the first place, and like, where are we trying to go?
Yeah, that's good. I also kind of think of a lot of conversations that I have with creators, and it's not uncommon for people to say, well, my CTR is this. or I want this CTR.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to remember that analytics don't usually stand alone. When you're thinking about CTR, having that metric is only valuable if you also have impressions and views alongside it. It's a story, right? And that's how you have to actually look at analytics, is what is the story that your the data is showing you. It's never just one specific metric.
Yeah.
So when we think about impressions and CTR, and like you're working with clients, what are some of those pieces that you teach some of your clients?
I think when it comes to click-through rate, it's actually interesting that you said that, because I get that experience a lot too, when it's like, I want to grow, I want to reach more people. This is what my click-through rate is. Why am I not growing? Why am I not doing better? Because I have a great click-through rate. And I think there is a misconception that the click-through rate is the only metric that really affects the algorithm, quote unquote, and like how far your videos can really go, when there really is a handful of different, you could have great thumbnails and still not have far reach, because, some other areas could not be great. You could work on those instead. So, not to jump too far ahead though, I think when I'm thinking of impressions and click-through rate, it helps for me to know, again, with the goal, like, are we trying to break outside of our current audience and reach new people who don't know you yet? Are you trying to, maybe you have had a big influx of people and like discoverability is not an issue for you, but like everybody comes through the front door and walk right out the back door, nobody sticks around. Is that something that we need to try to work on with our titles and thumbnails and our click-through rate? So that's kind of the first place that I start there, like kind of what is the goal? And then when it comes to our impressions, click-through rate, thinking about our title and thumbnail is definitely kind of that first place to start there.
There's something that you said in there when you're talking about like high numbers. So let's, when you have high CTR, for instance, right? High click-through rate, but you have low impressions and you also have low views, doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad video. It just means that it's a good video with narrow appeal. Okay.
Right.
So maybe really, really niched in. Now, the opposite of that, you could have low CTR, and this is one of the most misunderstood things I feel for creators. My CTR is really, really bad. Yeah, but you've got super high impressions. And coupled with that, you've got high views, but you're worried about your CTR. That actually just means that you have a good video that has broad appeal. So that's really where it comes in. It's not just one metric. Together, they tell a story. Now, if you have low click-through rate, you have low impressions and poor views, then you probably have a poor title, thumbnail, hook, and content. Probably somewhere in there are some opportunities for improvement. And then if you also have the complete anomaly, of course, you could have high click-through rate, high impressions, and high views. And we have seen this over and over and over again.
Yep, the unicorns, they're out there.
With clients, the total unicorn, right? Where it doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
And those are going to be probably your steady eddies that constantly bring you traffic. Yeah. And it's also not uncommon for those to happen 2 at a time on a video, on a channel. I've seen that happen.
Yeah. It is interesting to notice patterns too, because even when you were talking about that, the one example that is pretty common when you're trying to make discoverable content where you get a lot of impressions and a low click-through rate. And even like with that, what we're talking about here, it's important to not just look at that percentage, the click-through rate, but to actually look at the number of impressions too. And maybe get a baseline for yourself of like, what is normal? Like, what am I normally operating at? That's just kind of like a general number of impressions that I usually hit. And, maybe the next video that you do where you're shooting for a broader appeal and you get a huge number of impressions and you see a very low click-through rate percentage, maybe if you hadn't been looking at your impressions number, you'd be discouraged and see that and be like, man, I only got 3% click-through rate. That's awful. Where in reality, it's like, well, your video was surfaced to 10 times the amount of people that it normally is. That's a huge win. But it is interesting kind of noticing patterns with some of the creators that we work with, because I've noticed when I'm kind of sorting by impressions, like the videos for a lot of the creators that I've worked with who get the most impressions, usually those are the videos that they're kind of implementing what we've talked about in past podcasts of connecting known to unknown. Like if you're going to use maybe like a celebrity's face or like a popular figure in your niche, like a very well-known person, or something that a lot of people know, using that in your thumbnail and kind of connecting that to a known figure as opposed to your face potentially, that those types of videos tend to get the most impressions from the people I've worked with, which is just interesting. It's interesting to see that. So
yeah. And I feel like there's another question that gets asked a lot. Is there a good click-through rate?
Oh, all the time.
How do you respond to that?
Yeah, I give the answer that just nobody wants to hear, but it's just, it varies. It depends on the niche that you're in. Depends on the traffic you're getting too. Like search traffic is going to look different from other traffic. Even when you start to incorporate shorts, like impressions they work very differently when it comes to shorts, because shorts can be surfaced on the homepage, but they also, if you're getting a lot of these views on your shorts from the shorts feed. I'm saying shorts a lot. It's starting to sound weird, but if you are, a lot of the views on your shorts are coming from the feed itself, like impressions are not a thing. You're just swiping right into the next video. So that's why it varies depending on a lot of these other factors. It's hard to say, what is normal, but I would say probably between like 2 to 10% is usually pretty accurate for a window to look at.
Yeah. And it's not uncommon too, if you're a newer creator, and you have videos that are really more narrow appeal, it's not uncommon to see, I've got 12% CTR, 18% CTR. It's not uncommon to see that, but you will notice that the more impressions you begin to get, the broader you start to go. That number will come down. It's not a bad thing. And that's really the takeaway from the CTR part of the viewer signal conversation that we're having here, is there's a story between all three metrics when you're looking at it.
Right. Because I'd say, speaking to these small tweaks and kind of making those data-driven decisions, if you're able to, let's say you're working on all of my views are from subscribed viewers and I'm having a hard time breaking out. Maybe a goal is we're going to try to craft some titles and thumbnails and just video topics that maybe have a bit of a broader appeal going to a new audience. I'm going to start to evaluate my impressions moving forward, and maybe even don't pay a whole lot of attention to the click-through rate, but just how are my impressions going up? Am I reaching more people in general? Then maybe from there we can start to, okay, we're reaching more people. Let's make our titles and thumbnails a little bit better. And you can kind of move forward tangibly starting from there and kind of see some progress versus just, the percentage is lower, it's bad kind of a thing,
Yeah, that's a great point. So what about the second viewer signal? A lot of creators, I hear a lot of creators come in and my average view duration is this. That's all I'll get from them. Well, that doesn't give me enough context. Okay, so when you think about the first signal is actually the click. Can you actually start a watch session? Okay, and that's measured by the title, the thumbnail, and whether or not they click to viewed. The next signal is really how deep you can get them into your content. So what are we looking at analytics-wise when we're measuring that?
Right. I mean, I go straight to my retention graph. So, average view duration can be helpful, but that relies heavily on how long the video is in the first place. So you could probably argue the same with average percent viewed, your APV, but I like to look at APV because it's a bit of a better measurement of how far can you effectively move a viewer through your content. If you have shorter videos, on average, you're probably going to move them a little further in a 2-minute video versus a 20-minute video. But when we're thinking about the second viewer signal of just how long are they watching, I just kind of scroll right down and look at the whole retention graph. Where am I losing them? That's kind of the first big question that I ask. Where am I seeing a big drop off, and how do we mitigate that as much as we can?
Yeah, I feel like watch time average view duration, which is AVD, and then APV, which is average percentage viewed. Remember, it's better to have 30% of your audience watch 80% of your content versus 80% watch 30%. They together tell a good story, but it's really hard when you're looking at analytics, view duration, when you're comparing, let's say month over month, or people say my AVD is going down. Well, are you keeping all your videos the same length? And not that and don't hear me that I'm saying that you should do that. I'm just saying you need to compare apples to apples here. Because if you used to make 20-minute videos and then all of a sudden you realized you couldn't get people through them, so you started telling a more effective story, which meant more went to the cutting room floor, then chances are maybe you're making 8-minute videos now. Naturally, your AVD is probably going to be less, right? So you have to kind of just look at apples to apples when you're looking at that metric. And again, never look at just one metric. You got to look at them all to see what the true story is. Any other thoughts when it comes to that?
I think this is just, we both get asked this all the time of just what is the ideal video length? How long should my videos be?
Great question.
And so this is also a helpful thing to look at. If you notice, maybe you're doing 15-minute videos every time, and every time, you lose a good bit of people by halfway through. And then after that, it's like really aggressive, almost like somebody just really angrily, I'm moving my hand if you're watching, but for those who are just listening or not seeing this, but if it's like this really aggressive squiggly line that's just downward for the rest of your video, that's a really good indicator that your viewers are getting really impatient. They're probably just skipping ahead just to make sure they're not going to miss anything, and then they're out. Like by 50%, they've pretty much made up their mind that they're not invested anymore. So, when it comes to that question of what's the ideal video length, then I'd probably look at that and see like, okay, well, if I'm noticing that about halfway through, maybe I should shoot for like a 7-minute video and then just maybe do 10 of those. Run a good experiment, get a bit of a data size there, run like 10 of those at 7 minutes and just see, what do I notice? Most likely you're going to move people through your videos a lot more effectively.
I'm going to push back on that.
Okay.
We're going to get into this right now. All right. I love this. Because, and while there is, I think what you're saying has a lot of merit too, to just maybe try to tell a shorter story if you're used to telling a longer story or whatever that thing is. But I truly feel like a video needs to be just as long as it needs to be. So it may not fit in a 7-minute window is kind of where I'm going to push back.
Yeah.
So it might fit into a 5-minute video. And I work with a lot of creators, and I know that you do too, where, money is a thing. They're monetized. They have hundreds of thousands of viewers or millions of viewers, or even, smaller channels, but AdSense is part of their structure. And it's important for them to maximize that as much as possible. And when I say that, I'm talking about the ability to add a mid-roll ad. And in order to add a mid-roll ad, you need to have an 8-minute long video. But I am constantly pushing back on creators that I can see, because the videos are 8 minutes and 2 seconds, 8 minutes and 1 second, and I am constantly pushing back saying this feels like a point where we're going to lose viewers. And 9 times out of 10, when you look at the retention graph, that's the story that's being told. So always think about it. It's better to be able to get your viewer in as far as you can and then effectively move them on to something else, because that is viewer satisfaction, right? that is the ultimate viewer satisfaction. If you can get somebody engaged in your content, so the fact that you're getting them to the end screens and then moving them into something, you're extending the watch session. And that, if I can watch 2 videos versus 1, well, hey, if I only got partway into that 8-minute video and I left, then I did better with the 2 shorter or the shorter leading into something else. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I think it's really easy to kind of artificially inflate a video and make it, I mean, it's so true. Like the video needs to be as long as it needs to be. And there's a part of me that kind of feels like that's a similar answer to the, what's a good click-through rate question. And it's kind of like, this isn't really the answer that I wanted to hear, but like when you unpack it, it makes sense. So yeah, it's like if this would make sense as a 5-minute video, but we're making it an 8-minute video, it probably shouldn't be an 8-minute video. But if you could, even if it's 5 minutes and you can effectively get them into a new video and then they watch the next 5-minute video, like you're much better off that way. But I would even say too, as a caveat, like it's okay too, because there are a lot of tools when it comes to retention and engagement to improve it with like storytelling and like skills we can develop to hold people's attention better. And I'd just say reps too. Like if you're a newer creator, just doing it a whole lot, finding your voice, establishing some connection points and developing that skill can also, if you're starting a bit shorter and then you start to like see some improvement there, then you can maybe add, and I wouldn't say again to artificially inflate the video, but you can probably start to make some longer videos if you're developing that skill some more too.
Yeah. And I'm totally with you because I had a similar thought too. I think that at some point we get to the point where we trim out all the personality, a little too much of it, the point where we're removing, dead air and gaps and, little pauses and things, but you have to remember that those little pauses, now I just did that for actual effect right there. And I don't know if Julia, our editor, is going to cut that out, but
don't cut it.
Don't cut that, Julia. Those little pauses, sometimes that's tension. And that is that thing that actually keeps somebody hanging on. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to leave, but it's kind of like human to hear that. And when you have that, you just it helps move a viewer forward sometimes, or it's just slowing the pace down. Because I feel like everything on YouTube has gotten so crazy fast that we're missing some of those little, I'm going to say tense moments, but not tense in a bad way.
Yeah. I don't want to tangent too much, but I've been, so I'm a big Office fan. I love The Office, the show. And there's a podcast, the Office Ladies, and they basically will break down every Office episode and just give a whole bunch of like fun facts. And they'll go kind of through the whole episode and just talk about it like from their experience. Because it's 2 of the actresses who were on it talk about it. It's really interesting. But they talked about how, and it's network television, so it's different from YouTube, but it's interesting. There were a couple episodes where they talked about, how many seconds some of these shots had no talking, just nothing. It was just the like facial expressions. And it was really interesting. Some of them, they would point out like that shot was so impactful because it was like 47 seconds of silence, no talking. And for network television, that's unheard of, but that's why it was so impactful. And that's not me saying, go do, 47 seconds of silence in your video. Cause it doesn't translate. It's a little bit apples to oranges, but still it is really interesting just to kind of hammer on the point that you're making. Silence can really, tension that you feel can really make a moment impactful.
Yeah. So if you are, to bring this back around where we started the conversation with AVD and APV and watch time.
Yeah.
If this is something where you feel like you're struggling, maybe look at some of your storytelling techniques as well as editing techniques, so that you're not necessarily inflating just to inflate, but being very intentional in telling a very, what's the word I'm looking for? like high quality a story, more of a quality story versus a produced story. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah.
I feel like yeah. So we kind of touched on end screen elements and clicks. I'm going to say this: clicks per end screen element shown. That's actually the metric.
Yep.
Clicks per end screen element shown. Now, Sam and I write an insane amount of reports for clients, and we abbreviate these to CPESES.
It's almost weird to hear you say it out loud
for me.
Yeah.
It is. It's weird. It feels like a mouthful.
It does.
But this is the third viewer signal that the algorithm is really keenly looking for is, are you able to extend the watch session? Because that's really one of the goals of the algorithm, is to have people watch as long as they can and be completely satisfied. So for us to measure that is, how many end screen elements do you have at the end of the video? Now, we always recommend one. You can have two, you can have a subscribe button in that, but in my personal experience, I don't know about yours, Sam, I've seen videos that have millions of views on them and they have like 10 subscribes from the subscribe button there.
Oh, I agree.
It's not very effective at the end. So, if you want to just add one thing there, because when you start to put more and more end screen elements at the end, you're giving people choices. And in our experience,
choices are scary.
When you confuse, you lose.
Yep.
Right? To quote Donald Miller, who just put out a new book. Choices can be, I agree with you. Choices can be paralyzing. And if I have too many things to do, and with people's short attention spans, they're going to do nothing. So
yeah, I totally agree. I haven't seen a lot of real fruit from adding the subscribe, icon in your end screen.
I haven't either.
But even having the two videos there, like it's frustrating for me as a viewer sometimes to see maybe somebody get to the end screen and then maybe they even give a call to action. Like, if you like this video, you'll probably like this one, but then two of them pop up. And even that alone just immediately gets me to want to leave, because I don't know it doesn't really give me a reason. It's not clear to me which one I should click on. And then when there's a choice, it's just kind of overwhelming. So.
Yeah, I agree. And, when you're looking at this and you're evaluating your clicks per end screen element shown, CPESES.
There it is again. Yep.
If you have multiple end screen elements, just keep in mind it divides that by that. So we have clients that get healthy double-digit click-through rates at the end of videos. Now, I'm talking about not just above 10. I've had clients that get way over 20%, sometimes over 30% clicks at the end into other content, because they're giving a deep why somebody should take that action. And they're got somebody to the end where the end was probably a little bit of a surprise. And so that viewer wants to see more at that point. Now, if you can do that, that's a healthy signal. When you think about these couple metrics, what do you talk to your creators about when you're coaching clients?
When it comes to this, just end screens in general, definitely like avoiding the ending language, I think of this as another hook. So like, how do we effectively produce or introduce like a new idea or a new concept that's going to be our next video that we're going to call them to, but to like give them a good reason to go watch it, give a call to action. And this, I think, would be a good small tweak, as we're kind of touching on with these places in the analytics to kind of push our channel forward. Small tweak being, give a really good call to action to just one video at the end of your video. And then to go evaluate how you're doing with those would be to go look at some of these, definitely the clicks per end screen element shown. If you go into your analytics and look at that, you'll see, similar to a click-through rates, basically, of all of the end screen elements shown, how many of these people are actually clicking into them. And then, so like you just said, Ingrid, sometimes we see creators who give a really great call to action. You get like 20+% of those people at the end are going into that next video. which is huge. It's so good for extending
Huge.
that viewing session.
It is. And it also, it's language, right, to YouTube of these two pieces, this viewer is also this viewer, and so now YouTube understands who the viewers are for these pieces so that it can then, when another like viewer comes to the platform and is looking for something, it's another piece of content that it can surface. But some other analytics too, those are like the key ones for us that we really focus on to tell the story. Whenever I'm looking at a video to see how it does, I pull up all those analytics. Those are the ones that I pull up, and you have to kind of add some of them by clicking the little blue plus sign when you're in the advanced mode. So you go into a video level or the channel level, and you click advanced, and then you'll see a little blue plus sign over by where the video titles are. And if you click that, you get this massive list, pop-up list of analytics possibilities. So you'll want to look at impressions, impression click-through rates. You look at views. You'll look at watch time, average percentage viewed. You can look at average view duration. It's not one that we pull up usually. End screen element shown and clicks per end screen element shown. And that helps us to tell the bigger picture of what's going on with content. Now, a couple other analytics that we tend to focus on is not necessarily just subscribers, but subscribers gained. Why is that?
Yeah, I think it can help to see how many subscribers particular videos you're gaining from those particular videos. Let's say you're working on creating some more connection points, maybe some like primal branding or good storytelling. I think ultimately people are going to click the subscribe button when they feel some level of connection to you, the creator. So if you're working on integrating some more of those points into your content, even just sorting by subscribers gained can be pretty helpful just to give you an idea of what videos are converting the most viewers into subscribers.
Yeah. And it's not that subscribers lost is not important, and it's not that subscribers is not important. But when we're looking at like new pieces of content, and this happens as you grow on the platform and you start to have more and more subscribers, at some point you're going to have attrition, and that's just normal. So I really kind of focus a little bit more on what are we bringing in and what is connecting, like Sam said, to viewers. Now, that doesn't mean that you can just ignore, because maybe you have like a crazy amount of subscribers lost, and then what happened? What did we do to cause like an above the norm loss? But in general, we find more value in the subscribers gained metric. And then I do also track comments and likes, not very granularly, but especially when I know that the intention of a video is that it's a community video.
Totally agree. I like to, when I'm looking at the comments too, the quality of comments can also be interesting.
Definitely.
There's a creator I've been working with where we're trying to kind of shift a lot of the focus away from like the things he's talking about more to some of the stories he's sharing, some of kind of the open-ended questions that he's asking. And it's been cool to see the difference in the quality of comments left, because before it was all about like, yeah, that jacket is so cool, like just kind of all talking about the jacket, where he asked some very open-ended question in his first community piece that he did. And a bunch of people answered the question and just like very much resonated with him and some of his primal branding that he shared in that particular video. And it was a huge shift in like, now all these people are really interested in talking about themselves and engaging, and like very different compared to before. So yeah, that's another thing to kind of keep an eye on if you're looking at your comments.
One of the biggest mistakes I feel though that creators can make, and this is something that I definitely want everybody to hear here, is not to just look at what's going on right now. When you're looking at your video comes up and you're on the dashboard and you see that, 1 out of 10 or 7 out of 10 or, whatever it ends up being, we have a tendency to say, oh, well, what's my CTR like? Oh, how many impressions do I have? And you're just looking at it at a very, very granular level. Or another mistake is that people come in and they see how the channel is performing and then make an assumption that that's how their new videos that's the reason for the good or the bad. You need to have a better understanding of how new content is performing versus previous new content versus just the channel as a whole.
It's so important. And I feel like it can be confusing to kind of grasp that idea. But if you're in your analytics and you click on the advanced button and you're kind of looking at all of it, it'll automatically just put you in like the channel overall. Like if you've been creating for 10 years and you start experimenting with new things more recently, and then you're looking here, you're going to be like, I'm not really making big progress. I'm not really noticing any huge shifts or anything like that when you're looking at like this giant 10-year span of the whole channel as a whole. So making groups is really important. If you, let's say, focus on the last 10 videos you just made, like make a group of just the last 10 videos and then select that and then look at your analytics from there, because that'll give you a really good idea of, am I actually moving the needle? Are these small tweaks actually doing anything? Like you get a much more realistic look at some of the efforts that you're making.
Yeah. And YouTube they've helped us. It's not perfect. I will say this. When you're in the advanced mode, like Sam said, so you're on a channel level. Okay, you click analytics, then you click advanced mode, and then you can actually do some filtering at that point, and you can filter by publish date as well. So that's another way of getting to your analytics. Groups is the cleanest by far that we have found, creating groups, and you can make groups of everything that you publish from month to month. And just have, April videos, May videos. So you're comparing kind of apples to apples there. Or you can do it by publishing date. You can also filter by content type. Because remember, at a channel level, you've got shorts mixed in with videos. What does that do to your AVD? If AVD is really what you're looking at, shorts are so much shorter, for lack of a better way of saying that. Compared to longs, yeah. So, you kind of have to, when you're looking at data, you have to kind of think of all these things, which I don't know, might freak some of you out, but I just want to say, there is so much amazing information that you can actually dig into on the back end. Focus on the things that matter, and then make sure you're looking at apples to apples when you are doing comparisons to make real good data-driven decisions. Yeah. So, it is really easy to get into analysis paralysis. We as creators have a tendency to be, if you're actually watching this on YouTube, you can see I have my hand literally at my nose, so close to your data. You can so easily lose all objectivity. Don't make rash decisions. Give your video a little bit of time. Give it YouTube a chance, to really surface it and find the viewer for that. It's not uncommon for content to go very, very far, sometimes months after it's even been released, or even a year after. I'm not telling you to wait that long, but at least give it a couple weeks before making rash choices. We find tremendous value also in a zoomed out perspective versus just looking at something from day to day or week to week. We personally find that the best value in data comes in 90-day blocks, or even looking further zoomed out. It tells a completely different story than if you were just looking at one video at a time, or just like 1 week at a time, right, Sam?
Totally. Yeah, I totally agree.
When you look at data that's zoomed out, I feel like that's when you have an opportunity to actually find patterns. It's harder when you're looking from one video to another. So give yourself a little bit of distance, give yourself a little bit of space. You will see that you will actually view your analytics in a different way, and you're going to start to make decisions based on data-driven decisions versus emotional ones.
We like to leave you with a power tip here every week. And today we're going to be talking about actually the fourth viewer signal when it comes to the algorithm and all of its mystery and how it is making those decisions of surfacing your videos to more people. And so the fourth signal is actually a little bit harder to really jump into your analytics and measure. But the fourth signal is viewer satisfaction. Are viewers satisfied after watching your videos? And so you may have noticed if you're watching on YouTube that you may see some surveys that YouTube is actually putting out that'll actually ask you, did you enjoy this video? And you can rank it, 1 star to 5 star. So that is actually a real tangible way that YouTube is measuring that and evaluating that. But one way that we like to kind of jump in and see that from our end, if you're looking in your analytics, is you can jump in and look at your views, as you know, but you can actually break that down into new viewers versus returning viewers. And so this gives you a couple of really good barometers to see, with our new viewers, is this piece actually reaching new people who have not been to my channel? And so that in itself can be pretty helpful if you're maybe working on discoverable strategies and trying to reach more people. That's a nice way to see, like, is this working? Am I reaching new people with this content? But the returning viewers is a really good signal and a really good sign to kind of measure that viewer satisfaction of, okay, we're reaching viewers in the first place, but if these viewers are returning to our channel and continuing to watch, this is a really easy and really nice way in our analytics just to get a bit of a measurement of that to see, okay, am I making good content? Am I making good content that is bringing people back? That is kind of a tangible way for us to see that fourth signal in action. So I definitely would recommend jumping into your analytics and checking that out if you haven't at this point. But other than that, thanks for listening. We'll see you guys next week for another Video Creators Podcast. Bye.